Oh, it's a Friday. We've got 2 practices under our belt. Owen decided to play Monken talking about Shedeur. Will the Deshaun Watson part of things, will they take issue with that?
That was not about Shedeur at all. That was about Deion.
About Shedeur's personality? I heard him talking Shedeur's personality in that clip.
Opportunity to talk to Deion.
What about Deshaun Watson?
The Cleveland Browns training camp is officially underway, and after just 2 practices, one thing is already becoming clear. This team feels different. Not necessarily better. Not yet, but different. And if you've been following the Browns over the last few years, you know that difference matters. Because for a franchise that has struggled with slow starts, inconsistent quarterback play, and constant questions about identity, training camp isn't just about preparing for week 1. It's about establishing a culture. That's exactly what people are starting to notice under Todd Monken. Now, before anyone gets carried away, let's remember something. We're only 2 practices into camp.
And his extended family.
I don't know what Deion's dad is doing right now.
Coach Lance Reisland is in. What's going on?
Good morning. Good morning.
Great to have you. You've been there at camp both days, watching every single rep. You've been taking copious notes. Your voice has been heard on the warm-up show on the way in today. Jeff Thomas had some of that. It's always great this time around to have a legitimate football person.
There are no pads yet. Nobody has played a preseason game, and or Oster decisions have been made. But when experienced football people spend every rep watching practice, they start to notice trends. And one of the biggest trends so far is how Monken is running this football team. Compared to the previous regime, the atmosphere feels much more old school. Practices are physical. They're competitive. Players aren't spending endless amounts of time running drills against air. Instead, they're constantly working against real opponents. Everything leads toward actual football. 11-on-11 periods are emphasized. Competition is emphasized. Physicality is emphasized.
To talk to, since Ken is not here, his football legitimacy has been spent pouring over his installs with his youth football team. So I'll rely on you. I'll lean on you today. Now, I don't know if you're as into the offensive line as Ken is.
Oh, I love the offensive line. That's where I'm at every day.
Well, what don't you love? Special teams? You love special teams?
You got to have them. Love special teams, too. Got to have them. You know.
Good point.
You got to, seriously,
Yeah,
it's one of those things.
You do.
It should always be a push in the NFL. You should never know about them. That's when they're okay. You either win them or it's got to be a push. That's it.
See, now, Jim Tressel, he would say the punt is the most important play in football.
And perhaps most importantly, special teams are being treated like they matter. That might sound boring to casual fans, but football coaches understand exactly why that's significant. Great teams don't ignore special teams. According to observers at camp, Monken's staff is breaking down every phase of special teams. Punt coverage, field goals, extra points, return units, individual responsibilities, fundamentals, situational work. The message is simple. You may not win every offensive battle. You may not win every defensive battle. But special teams can consistently provide an advantage if they're coached correctly and practiced seriously. That's the kind of mentality that old-school football people love. And that old-school approach seems to extend throughout the entire operation.
There's 2 plays you can lose a game on special teams. Punt and kickoff return. So there's where
I'm taking notes now.
That's where you got to put your studs if you're struggling.
Do you want to go full nitty-gritty on that? I mean, we can. We have time. We got 4 hours today.
Yeah, I'll go as nitty-gritty as you want. Camp started. Life is good. Christmas morning came and gone. It's fun now.
I mean, Monken's spending time on special teams, right? Like you're seeing.
It's more than I've seen in my time down there. It is
more than Stefanski?
A lot more than Stefanski.
All right, forget. We've been doing this all wrong. We have been analyzing quarterback versus quarterback. No.
Players are staying on the field longer. Practices remain intense. Competition never seems to stop. Even when observers think practice is ending, another competitive period begins. There's a noticeable grit to everything happening at camp. Now, does that automatically mean the Browns are going to win football games? Of course not. But it could help solve one of the franchise's biggest issues over the last several seasons: slow starts. Too often, Cleveland has looked unprepared early in games and early in seasons. The hope is that a tougher, more competitive camp creates a team that's ready to go immediately when Week 1 arrives. And speaking of Week 1, there's one question everybody keeps asking. Who's going to be the starting quarterback?
We've got to go training camp practice for Monken versus training camp practice for Kevin Stefanski. Let our brethren know down in Atlanta.
Of course.
Shots have been fired from up north.
Calling them all.
On the shores of Lake Erie.
Different, not better. Different so far.
Different. Okay, tell us. Tell us what's different. This is great.
The thing that the thing I like about special teams, there's pretty much over the course of the summer and the spring, now you're into kind of the rhythm of practice. It's very similar to Kevin's practice starts, right? You're an individual with your position coach. You go to group work, so quarterbacks work with the backs, and then they work with the tight ends, receivers. That's universal for all coaches. Then he gets into a lot of 11 on 11.
Right now, that's the story dominating Browns camp. Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, young quarterbacks trying to prove themselves, veterans trying to hold on to their jobs, and a coaching staff trying to figure out who gives them the best chance to win. The challenge is that evaluating quarterbacks this early in camp is incredibly difficult. Fans see highlights on social media, a completed pass, an interception, a deep throw, a missed opportunity, and they immediately declare winners and losers. But coaches don't evaluate quarterbacks that way. Context matters a lot. For example, there was a play recently involving Shedeur Sanders and wide receiver Casey Concepcion.
A walkthrough. So they're either blowing the whistle quick or they're installing again against coaches. Very, very simple. Then they get into a highly competitive 11 on 11, and then they get into a special teams section. Now, what makes it different is it's not just a punt team. So early in practice, this is throughout practice. Sometimes they'll do an individual part of punt where everybody's in an individual, the upbacks, the linemen, whatever. So they're breaking it down individually. Then they'll do stations later on in practice where they're doing keeping everything in front, fundamentals, right? Because for me, special teams are all about getting your know-what lined up and playing with your hair on fire.
On the stat sheet, incomplete pass. On social media, some fans might call it a bad throw, but coaches saw something completely different. Concepcion was running against elite NFL cornerback Denzel Ward. Suddenly, routes that worked in college don't work anymore. Windows close faster. Defenders recover quicker. Mistakes get punished. The play wasn't necessarily a failure. It was a learning experience. The receiver learned how precise his route must be. The quarterback learned how quickly he needs to deliver the football. Those lessons matter far more than whether the pass was completed. That's why coaches constantly preach patience during training camp. Development isn't always visible in box scores. Sometimes the most important rep of practice is an incompletion, and that's especially true for young quarterbacks. Observers have pointed out that Sanders has shown impressive mechanics so far.
And that has to be done, making it important. And how do you make it important? You make it important by doing it all practice. Then they break it down, so they do it and then yesterday, like for example, they did everything extra point field goal. I think they're making it important. They're breaking it down, and they're stressing you can't always win offense. You can't always win defense. You can always win special teams if you work at it.
All right, well, that's exactly why every high school coach on their way in today. When do practices start? Have they begun already?
They should be, yeah. Those guys are rocking and rolling right now. Yeah, absolutely.
I hope every single one of them, maybe they're on their way to the weight room early on in the morning. I hope they're listening to you.
His footwork looks clean. His throwing motion looks polished. His confidence is evident. But there have also been moments where fans believe he's holding the football too long. Again, context matters. According to reports from camp, coaches are actually encouraging quarterbacks to extend plays during certain drills. They're specifically teaching improvisation. They're teaching quarterbacks to create explosive opportunities downfield. So when fans see a quarterback holding the ball, they may think it's a mistake. Meanwhile, coaches might be rewarding the exact behavior they're seeing. That's why overreacting to practice clips can be dangerous. The coaches know the objective. The fans usually don't. Meanwhile, Deshaun Watson remains one of the most fascinating storylines in camp. His supporters point to experience. His critics point to recent performance. And both sides have valid arguments. Watson has spent roughly a decade in NFL offenses. He understands professional concepts. He understands protections. He understands route combinations. He understands defensive disguises. Even when entering a new system, that experience provides an advantage. A young quarterback may still be learning terminology. Watson has already seen thousands of NFL plays. That knowledge matters. At the same time, experience alone doesn't guarantee success. Eventually, production has to follow. And that's exactly why this quarterback battle remains so interesting. Right now, nobody has separated themselves. Nobody has dominated camp. Nobody has clearly claimed the job. which is why many observers believe the real evaluation won't happen until later. When the pads come on, when preseason games begin, when joint practices arrive, especially when Buffalo comes to town, that's when coaches start getting real answers. Football without pads isn't real football. At least that's how many coaches view it. Defensive linemen can't truly rush. Offensive linemen can't truly block. Physicality is limited. Everything changes once contact becomes real. That's why many experienced evaluators refuse to make major quarterback conclusions based on the first few practices. The competition is still developing. However, if someone forced a decision today, if the Browns somehow had to play tomorrow, the answer from many football minds would still be Deshaun Watson. Not because he's been dominant. Not because he's clearly outperforming everyone, but because experience matters. If the goal is winning week 1, coaches often trust veterans until younger players prove they're ready. That's how professional football works. Jobs aren't given. They're earned. And that's another point repeatedly emphasized throughout camp. There is no such thing as fair. Not at this level. This isn't high school football. This isn't participation football. This is the NFL. Players get opportunities. What they do with those opportunities determines everything. Every snap matters. Every rep matters. Every practice matters. If you're only getting a handful of chances, you better maximize them. That's the reality of professional sports. The Browns coaching staff appears committed to that philosophy. Competition will determine the winner. Not hype. Not social media. Not public opinion. Performance. And while quarterback discussions dominate headlines, there may be an even bigger takeaway emerging from camp. Optimism. For years, Browns fans have carried the weight of disappointment. Every season comes with skepticism. Every mistake feels familiar. Every setback reminds fans of previous failures. But coaches don't operate that way. Players don't operate that way. Training camp is about today. Not yesterday. Not 5 years ago. Not 20 years ago. Today's practice. Today's improvement. Today's opportunity. That's why observers around the team continue to emphasize something important. The players aren't acting like a team expecting to lose. The coaches aren't talking like a team planning for the future. They're talking about winning. They're coaching to win. They're practicing to win. And whether that translates into actual victories remains to be seen. But the mindset is there. The energy is there. The competitiveness is there. For now, that's enough to create excitement. The Browns still have questions. The quarterback battle remains unresolved. Young players must continue developing. Veterans must continue leading. And tougher evaluations are still ahead. But after 2 practices, the early signs are encouraging. The culture appears tougher. The competition appears stronger. The attention to detail appears greater. And most importantly, the belief inside the building appears genuine. Training camp is still young. Nothing has been won. Nothing has been decided. But for the first time in a long time, there seems to be a clear identity forming. An old-school, hard-nosed football identity. And if that identity continues growing throughout camp, the Cleveland Browns might finally be building something capable of changing the narrative when week 1 arrives.